Welcome to Deep in the Valley, a Missouri Valley basketball podcast. I'm Dr. Chris Bowser, joined by Brian Dutler. And this is your home for everything happening across the valley, from Cedar Falls to Des Moines, Nashville to Normal, Carbondale to Chicago. For wherever you are across the valley, you're in the right place. So let's get deep into the valley. On this week's episode, we are joined by former UNI Panther and current assistant men's basketball coach for the Bradley Braves, Brian Jones. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite beverage. We're going to go deep into the valley. So, Coach Jones, thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Deep in the Valley.
Thanks for having me. Honestly, I'm really excited to be a part of this. I know it's something you and I have talked about. You're just the passion for the Valley one, but obviously for basketball too, and then obviously the Panthers.
Absolutely. And we obviously have a UNI slant, but at the same time, we want to be the Valley podcast for all fan bases. And so I'm sure we'll talk a lot about the Bradley Braves today, but let's start with where Brian Jones is from, his journey from a high school student athlete to the University of Northern Iowa, and then maybe as a professional player shortly after UNI.
I grew up in Rock Island, Illinois, which you're from the Quad Cities, so you know where that's at. Played for a legendary high school coach. His name was Duncan Reed, and very successful program through the years. We were Corey Jenkins, who was played for Northern Iowa, Monte Jenkins played for SIU, and then David Watts, who played for the Panthers for 1 or 2 years, transferred to Stetson. So obviously the Quad Cities, Tony Bruce, Quad Cities has got a lot of Northern Iowa, but Valley feel. Went to Northern Iowa, 90 to 94 was my years there. I had a great time. I obviously went to school with you guys and met a lot of wonderful people. And it's really the people at Northern Iowa opened up so many doors for me in my professional life and my personal life. From there, I went to Australia. At that time, Jason Reese, Steve Fife, Troy Mullenberg were over there playing, and then I followed after that. So Northern Iowa had a great name in the pro league in Australia. Actually, Steve Carfino, for you Hawkeye fans, was the guy who was the stud player over there. But a guy named Bill Runchie, who's an Iowa guy, Northern Iowa guy, helped start that league. So the Northern Iowa name was big over there. So went over there for a couple of years, then went on to play in Portugal and Spain. And then 1 year I broke my hand, and Kevin Lehman called me, who was at that time the head coach at Nebraska Omaha, and said, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm just sitting at home. I'm trying to rehab this hand." He goes, "Why don't you come and help me out?" So I did. Really, I went there. I moved to Omaha from Rock Island to stay in shape. And I moved in with my sister and Sean Olson, who my sister and Sean were Northern Iowa grads. They met in college as well there. And that's how I got started in coaching. And I thought it was just going to be something to stay in shape. But then once I got into it, it was in my blood. I knew if I wanted to really do this, I'd probably quit playing. So I was 2 years at UNO. And then that's when Dr. Chris Bowser got involved in my next move, along with Coach Miller. Steve Alford had lost an assistant literally the day before the season started, practice started, October 14th. I get a call, do a phone interview. I'm in a U-Haul driving to Springfield, Missouri the next day. So that just shows you, Chris, you had known me and known Coach Alford, and then Eldon had a tight relationship with Steve's dad and Steve's mother. So that's all the recruitment that needed for me to get that job. And I was there for 6 months. We go to the Sweet 16, and then he gets the Iowa job. And I'm blessed to go along with, because I grew up in the Quad Cities. I knew a lot about Hawkeye basketball, but just the state of Iowa. I was there 9 years, and then I got the head coaching job at North Dakota. That's where the Panther influence came in. Mac was an assistant there at one time, and Jake played there. But then also our team chaplain from Iowa was an All-American there. So there was a lot of Iowa feel, but Northern Iowa feel up there in Grand Forks, North Dakota. And you need those things in any profession. I think you need somebody to help you get your foot in the door. Then once you get the interview, you got to sell yourself and sell your vision. And I was blessed to be there for 14 years. And then honestly, I had to make a decision. At that time, my kids were getting older and I was missing a lot of stuff. And I stepped down from a head coaching job, 3 years left on my contract, and wanted to get back closer to home, to the Midwest, and went to Illinois State during a crazy time, COVID. And they ended up letting go Coach Muller. And then I was the interim for the last 6 games or so. And then got hired at Bradley, and we won the league that year. And then I go down to East Tennessee State to coach my son. I always wanted to do that. He was playing down there. And I coached him for 2 years. And once he was done with that, then I got a call from Wardle to come back to the old Bradley Braves. And the Valley's home to me. It's been a part of my life for so long, and it's my wheelhouse. And I was just grateful to have an opportunity to come back and be a part of a great league, and that's so special to me and something I know the history about. So it was definitely a great move for me, and I'm just grateful that I've had the journey I've had, but the people in my life to help me along the way and help open doors for me, but also just be a part of my life and my journey.
You have such a great story, a Valley story, right? Former UNI player, then SMS, which is no longer in the league. They were in the Valley for as long as UNI. In fact, they got into the Valley a year before UNI. And so I think that's a fascinating journey. I do want to say that when you got to Springfield, Missouri with your U-Haul, that you actually moved into my apartment and I moved out and actually moved in with another assistant coach, Steve Lynch. And we all thought it was a really good idea that two assistant coaches maybe got a chance to spend some time apart from each other after your work day every day. And so that was actually a fun little thing for me to pick up right away and go, I got an apartment for you. You can take over my lease and I'll move in with Lynch. And so that was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, we shared an office, so living together and sharing an office probably wouldn't have went well, but as Lynch, he's a fiery guy. I love him.
Yep.
But yeah, if it wasn't for you, quite honestly, Coach Miller, I don't know if I would be on the path I'm at, because I needed that opportunity in me, Biles, that like my passion for this game and I still feel I'm about to turn 55. I was a high school coach for 2 years. I went back and helped one of my mentors at Rock Island Alleman. I helped him for a couple of years. So this year was my 30th year of coaching. And I still have the same passion as I did when I first got into it. It's in my blood. It's the only thing I know. But again, I had such great mentors and teachers, and it's such a great foundation to allow me to just continue to do what I love, because it's not a job. It's just something I truly enjoy doing.
Mr. Dutler, do you have any questions for?
Yeah, the Valley keeps pulling you back. You just keep coming back and being the Valley-centric podcast that we are. Is kind of explain what makes the Valley your wheelhouse, as you said.
Obviously playing in the league, and there's so many guys I came in, played against during that time that are all coaching, and we cut our teeth together as players, cut our teeth together as young coaches. But I'll be honest, obviously the landscape of Valley has changed with the teams, and I still have a lot of pride. I don't want to tick people off, but the old Valley with the Wichitas, with the Creightons, with the Tulsas of the world, and when I played, man, there was some who's of players, but also coaches. So just being a part of that and seeing that and living it, that's really set the tone for me. And the league does not get enough. I know we were probably number 9 in the Ken Palm, but it's a high major minus. If you want to say what is it, it's a high major minus league. You saw that. And what I'm excited about right now in the league, it's getting back to what it used to be in the 90s. You got legit centers, you got bigger bodies, stronger bodies, and some great young talent. But yeah, the historic programs. It's funny because it's me, Marcus Belcher, who played in the Valley, but he's been to a bunch of Valley schools, and now Brendan Mullins, who was at Illinois State, SIU, he's at Murray. Now he's just going to Belmont. I was texting him, and I'm just like, hey, you're taking my title. Because I've been to Missouri State, I've been to Bradley twice, been to Illinois State, and played at Northern Iowa. Us guys bouncing around a bit, but excuse me, that just shows you that for me, the love I have for the league and the respect, just because of the quality of basketball, the tradition of the league, but also the tradition of some of these schools, and most of the schools have. So it's until you go to Arch Madness, let's be honest, because I was an assistant in the Big Ten, maybe outside the Big Ten tournament, it's the next, and it's really close to being the best conference tournament out there. And it just shows the type of support those programs have once you get down to St. Louis, and people show up and show out for their teams.
One of the things that I always like too, Brian, both Brians, at the Valley tournament is a lot of the fans in those fan bases, even when their teams lose, they stick around. And they stick around because they want to watch the rest of the basketball. And we were talking to a fan from Murray a couple of years ago when they first entered the league, and they were like, we can't believe that you guys stay. And I'm like, it's Arch Madness, man. That's what we do. And so I think there's a lot of people that kind of have our same mindset. And so I agree with you guys completely about those things. Let me ask a follow-up question. Kevin Lehman talked about one thing he had heard from the new Murray State coaching staff this year about they didn't understand the physicality of the league and how well scouted the league is. Can you maybe speak to that? The Valley compared to the league that you were in at North Dakota, East Tennessee State, and even the Big Ten. Talk a little bit about the physicality and maybe the preparedness of all of the coaching staffs in the league.
I think for sure. So the Summit League, it's an offensive league. and that's what they're known for. The up tempo, the defense is just okay. But same thing with the SoCon. It's an offensive league, but they do have great coaches, both leagues. The Valley's the closest to the Big Ten. It's a half-court league. You're not scoring in transition. You might in non-conference. You're going to do that. Teams, we all come out every season and say we want to play fast, but once you get in league play, teams are so good. One, as you mentioned, taking away your strengths, making it a half-court game, and then that's where you really just got to be good in your concepts, your foundation, because they're going to take away your strengths. And I just think the coaches, they're all, the one thing about Jake, I will say this, Jake, Ryan's doing a great job at Illinois State, and Wardle here, and obviously we got a lot of turnover, so there's new guys. I know Coach Nagy is a great coach because I've coached against him for a long time. But everybody, it's amazing. Play calls, they're on top of your stuff and your tendencies. And a lot of it has to do with film too. Like you have more staff members now, but film is unlike when, again, I remember going back to Missouri State SMS. I'm in the room, the film room, hitting pause, play, record with the deck-to-deck VHS. It's so easy now. So you have access to film instead of wanting it mailed to you. So I just think there's coaches who can just spend time of really preparing their opponents. But yeah, you better be good at your foundation, your little things, because they're going to take away a lot of your strengths. So you better be good at the out-of-bounds plays, the special teams things that allow you to win a game at crunch time.
100%. And Brian and I talk about, especially down at Arch Madness, you don't want to face a Brian Wardle coach team when he's wearing the ruby red slippers.
Yeah. He knows how to win. That's the one thing in the right way. The three teams that know how to win in Arch Madness right now are Northern Iowa, Bradley, and Drake, because that's what they've done the last 10 years.
Yep.
So those programs know how to win. Some of these younger coaches are still learning, and they're doing a great job, but it's just some of these guys just have never had that target on their back. And you just got to go through it. That's all it is. You got to go through it and experience it. And once you get more reps at it, you learn. All right, we did this. We played better this way, this preparation. Maybe we didn't go as long in our practice. Maybe we focused a little bit too much on this. It's a trial and error. And once you find a good rhythm, you stick to that routine.
Mr. Dutler, what other questions do you have?
This kind of goes into the scouting. You hear about how well the league is scouted and the coaches and what they do. But on my side of it, in my business, I focus a lot on numbers. So it comes into analytics and things along those lines. And maybe if you can talk a little bit about when you were a head coach to today's game and the use of analytics, and whether that has anything to do with rotations, whether that's got to do with offensive sets, whether that's got to do with playing time. How are you guys using analytics to further the development of Bradley basketball?
Yeah, that's a hot topic for sure. And it's sometimes you can get too many numbers involved. At the end of the day, it's still playing basketball. You got to allow kids to be who they are. It was crazy. This summer, I looked at, for you guys back when we played, I was looking at our box scores, right? We were lucky to shoot 12 threes a game. And if we did, it was me, Carp, and Cam. There's like only three of us that really shot them, but we were lucky to shoot 12 a game. Now, we lived in the mid-range, and obviously Eldon, with coach, was big on getting 2 feet and playing in the paint and playing off 2 feet at the rim, which is still true today, and drawing fouls. So we definitely love to do it because I do a lot of the defensive stuff, especially for personnel, trying to take away some of their strengths. All right, we look at things. All right, they drive left X amount of times, or shooting behind a ball screen, they're shooting 12% compared to a catch and shoot. So we got to run them off the line. We can't allow them, if they shoot a ball behind a pick and roll, you can't take everything away, right? You got to pick your poison. What are you going to do? In the post, all right, what shoulder do they like? Do they want to bounce it? So we do that. But as far as sometimes as what are you allowed to shoot? Today's game is so evolved with it's got to be layup or three. I don't always agree with that because there's some guys, Northern Iowa's Campbell's the prime example. What's his best shot? And as the kids say today, his bag is that he's getting to that pull up to that mid range. And that was his best thing. So you got to allow those guys who do have a special talent or niche to do what they do. But I think you can really stress shot selection. And what does shot selection mean to me? It means, what do I see as a coach or as your teammate? What are you shooting in practice every day? Don't surprise me by taking this shot when we never see you shoot it, or what we're trying to stress within our offensive system. So I do think you can definitely use it for game planning, taking away things and their tendencies, but at the same time, it's still basketball. You don't want your kids to be robots. and to be fearful. Offensively, you never want them looking over their shoulder. Is this a good shot? Is it not a good shot? You can hold their feet to the fire a lot more defensively because that's more, are you locked in? Is it effort? Is it toughness? Are you connected as a group? But offensively, that's a talent. That's a skill.
I think that's really good. Bradley is one of those programs in the Valley that, regardless of what their record is, I never felt good with the UNI team going into Peoria. They have one of the best fan bases in the league, maybe in the Midwest. Carver Arena is just a really tough place to play. It's a really cool place to play, an old hockey barn. And when Bradley's got it going, that place is one of the best places to watch a college basketball game in the country. Brian, talk a little bit about one of the things that I've seen. You guys have been successful over the course of the last decade. I love the way that Bradley plays. In most years, right, kind of long athletics, kids that they can play man to man, they can guard 1 through 5, or you can switch it up and you can really stretch people out and play zone. You also spread the ball very well on offense and can attack, get 2 feet in the lane, but you can also shoot the three. Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy, Coach Wardle's philosophy on building that team and building that philosophy, but then also maybe finding the talent that fits into his style of play?
Yeah, obviously he's going to build it around his personality. He's a blue collar guy, man. He's hard nosed, and that's the way he was as a player. I think we all, when we become head coaches, we tend to gravitate to somebody that reminds us of ourselves or people we enjoyed playing with. But he wants those blue collar guys, high character guys who are going to guard. I think that's the big thing. We've known we weren't as good defensively this year. Now, I do think some of that is a byproduct of the portal. But what you're going to see with the portal as coaches, we're going to have to probably simplify things on both sides of the ball because you don't have the retention of your roster to be able to teach and continue to grow your system. You got 1-year guys. And so what can we do on both sides of the ball to where they can do it consistently enough and repeat it at such a high level to where they're not thinking, they're just playing. So you can't get real complex. But for him, it's definitely starts on the defensive end. He wants physical guys. Where they've been really good is, as you said, length at the rim protection, whether that's one, is for me personally, I feel they've done a great job. And it starts with the strength coach, getting strong bodies. They're building their armor up to be able to guard and slide their feet, but put their chest on you to where they don't demand maybe an extra help or a stunt in basketball terms, but they've had great guys to be able to help one another and rotate and protect the rim. And that has to do with the length that you were talking about. So that, to me, it starts in the defense for coaches' philosophy, but then offensively, he loves IQ and skill. You got to be able, we don't run a lot of things, but you got to know how to play. You got to understand spacing. You got to understand when to cut, when to make the right play, the pass being on time and on target, and just being unselfish. I think that's the biggest thing is just you play the right way, play unselfishly, play for your teammate, and good things are going to happen. But he's been blessed with some coaches are scared of the little guards. He's had a tremendous success with little guards. So when we're recruiting, if you're a smaller guard, they've done tremendous here. But also if you're a skilled big, a Rink Mask, a Malabai Leon, we recruited those guys and they were centers. And then Malabai turns into a wing. It just shows the development piece. That's what I will take from my foundation is Steve Alford, when he was with him at Missouri State and Iowa, like the skill development piece and preparation piece is such a big part of his philosophy. But same thing with Brian Wardle. I think probably, and all the really successful coaches out there, the development piece and living in the gym with them and helping them continue to grow. So he wants those guys who live it and love it, not just play. And so that's been good. And this you talked about that Peoria is unbelievable. It's a basketball town. One, I grew up in the area, so I know the Peoria Manuals and Peoria Centrals, hotbed for basketball, especially when I was coming up in the 80s and 90s. They had some guys coming out of Peoria. We never got the love in Central Illinois like Chicago and East St. Louis got, but we had some players here in the middle part of the state. And that's why you saw when I was in school in Northern Iowa, they were dipping into Illinois a lot because there were a lot of players. No different than Minneapolis during that time. Minneapolis is a hotbed too. That now it's starting to get people are starting to get up in there. But before it was UNI. And when I was at North Dakota as a head coach, I recruited 2 areas, Minneapolis and Minnesota and Iowa. Because I knew if they weren't good enough for the Panthers or the Bulldogs, I was going to get a pretty good player out of those areas.
Right, Mr. Dutler, what's your next question?
What you talk a little bit about whether it's team building, things along those lines, and essentially we have to look at rosters as basically 1-year rosters with the portal. We talked a little earlier before we got going on about a little bit of break from who's in and who's out, and kind of what's that balance for you, and maybe program wise, what are you trying to look for as far as portal kids coming in? Are you trying to use it as a one and done kind of atmosphere, or you want to try to hope to retain and be able to grow, develop some concepts and develop the player into multiple year player?
Probably the reality of it, if you can keep somebody for 2 years, it's a win, in my opinion. Obviously, it's a lot of one and dones, but if you can keep a kid for 2 years, now obviously there's some, Northern Iowa's one of them, and even Illinois State this year, they've had some success, and Bradley too, they had some success retaining guys. So I think it's the relationship piece, but even then, that's even getting harder and harder because of the amount of time. I think as coaches now, we're around them so much more than it used to be when we were in school. What's changed so much now, we have them in the summertime, you're around them, you're developing them. You start practice early September now instead of October 15th. So it's such a long year, and it does become a long year for everybody, because here's my gripe or concern. When you should be, and the biggest part of the mid-major season, March Madness, that's the best time of the year, and it's the biggest time of the year for our programs. But it's crazy nowadays. You're worried about your roster and your next year's roster because people are contacting whoever their people are, and that's happening. It's just the nature of the beast, and hopefully there's going to be some clarity on some of this stuff as we move forward. But I don't like that distraction of that. But I think you do your best you can. You're around them all the time. You invest in them. You pour into them. And I think we do a great job at Brad, that pouring into them between the lines, skill development. Outside of it, we spend a lot of time with our guys at Coach Wardle's house in the community, doing things together. We're together so much. I think your biggest goal is it's going to be hard for them to say, yeah, I'm going to get in the portal. If you build those relationships, that makes it a lot harder for them. Because what young people don't understand today, obviously the grass isn't greener, and sometimes it's that short money, it's that quick money. Instead of, if they truly have aspirations of continue to play, does me staying here benefit me 3 or 4 years down the line? Not just next year. I know I can make a lot of money next year, but I'm in a different role. My role is going to be completely different. Maybe the offense is completely different, and my usage rate is different. So it's just, I think some kids don't really sit down and take the time to dive into those things. They see the dollar signs instead of, all right, what's going to be the best thing for not my next year's financial thing, but let's say 5 years from now when I'm still trying to really make it professionally. So yeah, we're always talking about that stuff. How do we continue to grow? And because if you don't change and grow and move with the times, you're going to get left behind with how do we retain these kids? But I think it's always about those relationships and really investing and diving into them and helping them achieve their dreams. If they know you're really invested in them and helping them achieve their dreams, they're really going to open up to you. I think some kids are close to the vest a lot, but once you start pouring into them, they're going to open up to you and really be grateful for the things that you're doing for them.
So from a staffing standpoint, when it comes to the coaches and the recruiting and things along those lines, well, if you're looking at a percentage basis, how much of your guys' time right now you're looking portal wise versus looking at that high school recruit? Obviously windows are different, things like that, but from a budget perspective and then also just time perspective, where do you guys try to get that balance?
We're not afraid. We love high school kids. And I really feel for high school kids because I had obviously kids my children were coming out during this crazy time too. There's so many good high school kids right now coming up that are getting really under recruited and end up playing Division II or NAI. You saw it in our league this year. Ian Scott Smith from Northern Iowa. Are you kidding me? Those guys were NAI players, talented. And I don't think many young kids will be listening to this. There's a lot of good players. It's college basketball. There's so many good players out there. And especially during this pocket of time when the COVID and all that stuff, kids are getting under recruited. But we would love to sign at least 2 high school kids a year if we can. But then, and you're seeing in the league, veterans and maturity wins games, whether it's their mental or their physical, and they've been through that fire of a season and the stresses of that. I think that's benefited it. We were the second youngest team in the league, so I thought, I'm going to selfishly speak, I thought Wardle did an unbelievable job of probably one of his better coaching jobs this year of his career of taking the second youngest team and finishing second. But then there's still the job that you and I did. Those guys are older and they just showed in the biggest stage of the year. And those older guys for 3 days or 4 days for them played at such a high level. And that's why you need those older bodies. So it is a fine line, and some really talented players get lost in a shuffle, unfortunately. But it's different now, too. I will say this. You used to have 5 years to figure it out as a coach, and you got a little grace. Now with money involved, you get 2 or 3. If you're not showing progress, you're probably getting let go as a head coach. And that's where it's not just the players. It's a lot of pressure on coaches nowadays, because you got 2 or 3 years, especially when you're throwing around money to buy a roster and there's not a lot of results there. That's where it's a fine line. It's a struggle at times.
I think that actually speaks volumes then to the longevity that Coach Wardle's had in Peoria at Bradley. Brian, talk a little bit about what you just mentioned it, right? Finished second in the regular season and then lost in the semifinals at March Madness, played an NIT game at home. Coach Lehman said that Dayton was really good. I think Coach Lehman called that game. So maybe kind of encapsulate maybe your season and then the postseason trip to the NIT.
The season, quite honestly, I thought we overachieved. Going to as coaches, we always say, what are we going to finish? Thought with our youth, if we could finish a couple games above 500, that was an unbelievable year. And then all of a sudden we started knocking some people off, and it just showed you the resiliency of our kids. But that's a byproduct of what Coach Wardle's doing. And sometimes it's not always easy. And I love it. Even we just got done with the Final Four, like the Coach Hurleys of the world. I miss the coaches that hold you accountable and help you grow as young people, because today's so many things are given to them without really earning. And I think that's what he's done an unbelievable job of, just coaching them. It's coaching. Yeah, it's demanding. He's going to hold you accountable, and the ability to continue to grow and get more connected together and grow in your toughness and your confidence. And that happened during the year. We won some games. I mean, you look at Indiana State and Evansville, they lost a lot of close ones. If you win some of those, it's a completely different year. We won our close ones. And that goes to just Coach Wardle's coaching. His ability to make his adjustments and play calling in crunch time was unbelievable. Our out of timeouts was unbelievable. We just had different guys step up at different times. And down the stretch, it was our older guys that did a good, Alex and AJ and Meta being seniors. But obviously Kwani was a very talented player. But the jump he made from his freshman year to his sophomore year, again, goes to credit Coach Wardle, his development plan. But yeah, this season, to me, I knew once we won at Drake, it sounds crazy, once we won at Drake, we had a chance to really run some games off there because the schedule's in our favor. And we did. The big things, we lost a game at home. You don't want to lose those, but we only lost one. So that helped us stay in the mix. But Belmont got out to and obviously Murray too, got out to such a hot start. The rest of us are playing kind of catch up. And once we got to the tournament, we were playing good basketball. And quite honestly, I don't think anybody wanted to play anybody. It was just like, this year is crazy. Like, you can't tell me Belmont was going to be fired up to play Indiana State or Evansville. Just like those, on any given night, those teams are going to win. And the way Valpo was playing down the stretch, I knew Northern Iowa, once they got healthy, once Smith got back, and Hornseth, and even RJ, those guys, once they got healthy, they were going to be a problem. And even Southern Illinois, the way they guarded, and the guard play in the league this year, unbelievable guard play, especially point guard play. Every team had a guy, just, man. And the freshmen. There's the freshman talent in this league. Get there, we beat, obviously, a dogfight with Valpo, which we had dogfights in the prior 2 games. We get to the Panthers. Now, I will say that that game they did. RJ Taylor won in the game, in my opinion. He hit huge shots, and shots as a defensive guy. Yeah, we're going to live with that 19-foot pull-up, but he made them. And Leon Bond was unbelievable as well. But I think what you saw this year, what I didn't like about our side of the bracket was us, Northern Iowa and Illinois State, were all on the same side. We had the most physical teams on this side, and I'm not saying they're finesse, but more the up-tempo teams and free-flowing teams on the other side of the bracket. So we just beat each other up on our side, and that's what happened. But obviously the older bodies in Northern Iowa was able to sustain that for those 4 days. But yeah, it was a NIT. Those are always tough because we made 4 straight, and people don't realize that's not easy to do. It's great for our league that we had so many teams in the NIT. That just showed the respect we have on a national stage for the product we have in this league. So that was great for our league. But Dayton was unbelievable. I thought they could have won it all. Obviously, what hurt them against not taking anything, Illinois State is great, but just losing their point guard, who was their guy, their mention, that hurt them. But Illinois State still had to do it on the road. They still had to go get a win. But you can say all that you want, but they still had to go into their building where they had lost all year and beat them. Great year for the league in general. I think all of us as fans, you're hopeful we can get back to 2 teams in NCAA, because we had some teams that were definitely tournament type teams and able to compete with anybody.
Well, I think Brian and I said on a previous podcast that we thought Belmont could win games in the NCAA tournament. In Belmont, Bradley, Northern Iowa, Illinois State, I think they could have won games in the NCAA tournament if given an opportunity. Brian, talk a little bit now that we've maybe put a cap on the end of the 25-26 Bradley Braves edition. As you guys move forward, you've had a couple of departures, but you've also signed a few folks. Can you talk about, without naming names, I don't know that you can, but without naming names, what you're looking for, how you're going to spend the next couple of weeks? We joked about it before we started recording that your time tonight is maybe a few minutes away from the portal and your research.
Yeah, as I said earlier, it's a great steady break, right? I don't have to be glued to my laptop. They're watching film of a player or seeing who's jumped into the portal. And that's one thing I'll say, that as coaches, we have no downtime anymore. That's what's changed so much when I first got into this profession. This time of the year, you're able to decompress and exhale a little bit, and be in the gym with your guys and lifting weights, and maybe try to sign one player in the spring. But you still had that time, even in June, to decompress. It's a 365 job now, and that's why I think you're seeing some of the older coaches retire. There's just no time. It's not healthy. It's just to rejuvenate yourself at times. I think the guys who are able to find time to do that are the guys who are going to stay in this profession a little bit longer than others. But this time of the year, we are active in the portal. We need to replace some guys. We signed 2 junior college kids who both played in the national tournament down at Hutch. Very excited about them. We got one high school player out of Ohio who's got a tremendous future, because he's a coach's kid. He can really shoot the ball. But obviously, with our departures of our guards, we're going to have to find a point guard and some frontline players. And I think that's what we got. We do have 6 returners coming back that we're excited about. They didn't get a lot of court time this year, but that's just because they had some older kids ahead of them. I think that's where kids nowadays just have to be patient with it. And especially when they're younger, they do come into an established program like Bradley. And this year, these high school kids were coming into a team that had just coming off 28 or 29 wins. It's not like you're coming off a really bad team. A lot of growth of those kids, but they were tremendous in practice all year for us. They had a lot of opportunity to play and do some scout team stuff just to build their confidence. But I expect our returners, the 6 returners, to make a big jump this offseason to help us. But we need point guard play. We need some shooting in the wings, and then we need obviously a couple frontline players. And like I mentioned before, the Valley's getting back to traditional bigs, which I'm really excited to see, instead of a bunch of undersized. And the Valley went to a spurt where there was a lot of undersized guys. Now you're getting back to legit 6'8" to 6'10", 240, 250. And that's why I say it's a high major minus league. You look at the bodies of the guards, 6'3" and strong, and the wings are 6'6" to 6'7", and then your bigs are 6'8" to 6'10", 240. So it's a legit high major minus league, in my opinion.
That's awesome. So once you've got your roster all together, you said that kids will get to campus in June. Can you talk a little bit about, and we'll have you back on, obviously, Brian, in the summertime to maybe talk what summer's going and how you're going to kind of transition into the fall. But talk a little bit about, maybe, is there anything you're really looking forward to for this summer when you bring kids to campus? And can you talk about any of the non-conference games maybe you've got for next year that might be interesting to fans that are listening in?
Well, the schedule, let's start with that schedule. That's always a piece of work, and that was always been a big part of my duties until this year. I tell you what, it's getting harder and harder, because as I'm sure you saw the tweet or the thing on Twitter with Matt Painter talking about, we play 8 non-conference games, 4 of them going to be high major opponents, 4 are going to be mid majors. And when you're already playing 4 high majors, why would you want to play a Bradley? Why would you, when they've had success? I've sat in that seat as a head coach. That's a lose situation. And especially now with the net, there's obviously teams, they're going to try to beat somebody and run up the score just so their net is higher. And it's not what we like as coaches, because you want to reward, especially those guys at the end of the bench that bring it every day, that maybe the average fan doesn't get to see or even appreciate, because they don't see what they're doing on the scout team. And they have to play every rep defensively and just getting their butt kicked every day. So that's where you want to be able to reward those guys, but it's getting harder and harder, because we got to do this to improve our net. So that's the downfall of how the system is put in place. But we're going to play in a neutral site MTE type tournament. And really, we're still honestly, our schedule's still being put together piece by piece, and it's a slow burn, and we might not be done until 1st of August, quite honestly. And that's why it's awesome that I'm glad the league, we know that it's not the uneven schedule like it used to be with obviously the odd teams. Now everybody plays everybody. So obviously that's great to see that again. But yeah, the scheduling piece it's always a funny thing. And it's such a big thing for you fans out there. People talk about recruiting and talk about that, but scheduling is just as important to the success and to a program as just as much as recruiting. Because if you put together a hard schedule, a tough schedule, and your kids get off to a slow start, it's just tough. The mental, it really goes. So you got to be really strategic behind your scheduling. There's the way how those pieces fit together. But my favorite time, honestly, is the summertime because I love being in the gym. I'm a gym rat. Even as a player, I love being in there with our guys and just because the summertime, there's no stress. You're not worried about the next game. You're not worried about this opponent. It's the time you can finally be selfish as a player with your game. All right, I need to improve upon these 1, 2, maybe 3 things. 3 sometimes is too much, but 2 things I can really focus in on this and worry about me. And that if I can improve in those things, then I know we are going to be better when the season rolls around. That's why I love the summertime because there's no stress. It's just the summer. We're in there, we're sweating, we're growing, and we're getting to know one another. But there's not the stress of school. There's not the stress of an upcoming game or the season. I think that stress level is so much lower. So then you can really dive into one another as a group. And just seeing them, how those pieces fit together, I think as a coach, you love seeing that unfold. And you see where the journey starts, and that is in the summertime, and where that foundation is laid for that season.
That's awesome. And BJ, we will definitely have you back on.
Yeah, we got to talk about camps, like the legendary camps. That needs to be an episode.
Yeah.
The legendary stories from the UNI camps of Muggsy Mogues doing this. I don't know if you can see my hand. Getting paid a bunch of money, and the campers are clapping when his hand went over the other hand, and that was his speech. So the amount of legends we had at Coach Miller's camp, because obviously they respected him so much, and he's such a humble, unbelievable person, but just the people we had rolling in and during the summer months, that was some of the best memories of my college time at UNI's, those summer camps, and the people we got to see and just be around and have a lot of fun.
You're the second person that said that we need a summer camp episode, so we will definitely.
Stories. Yeah, yep. We could probably do a 30 for 30, how you set the dome on fire. There's a lot of things to unpack in some of Dave Core stories or whatever we want to title these things.
Absolutely. Brian, let me ask you one final question that is not necessarily basketball related. 2 things. Other than Bradley, where is your favorite place to play in the league? And then if you invite Mr. Dutler and I to a home game in Peoria next year, where would you suggest that Dut and I do our pre-gaming?
All right, favorite place. Wow. I played in the Dome, so I can't say that. The one thing we need to talk about as well is we didn't need to warm up at Northern Iowa because by the time you ran from the locker room to the Dome floor, you didn't need a warm up. That run was a half a mile long, and you didn't need to do anything but just run to the floor. You were loose. You didn't need to stretch. You didn't do any of that stuff. Honestly, that's a great question, man. Now, it wasn't that way when we played. I tell you, one place it starts to show out is Indiana State starting to get a lot of fans. They're fans. The state of Indiana, they're basketball fans. SIU still gets a great crowd. And now I think Illinois State's starting to get there, but Indiana State, that's the one thing I appreciate. They just appreciate good basketball. And Northern Iowa's good too as well, but I can't say that one because I'll be biased. But if you came into town, wow, because we play downtown, you got hoops, you got the little bar there, got great pizza. But there's a lot of little neat places right around Carver Arena there that for years the state tournament used to be here at Carver. So it's definitely, there's a lot of nice little, as I say, the local flavor holes in a wall that you like to just hop into and get a good meal and a drink before the Braves take off. But I will say that I don't know if you're on this trip, but the memory of me of my senior year in the old Carver Arenas, I'm inbounding the ball underneath their bench, and that's when you can drink beer at the games, and the student section's right there. And a guy actually poured, I'm inbound, and the guy pours a beer over my head while I'm taking the ball out underneath the basket. So yeah, the time of the old Bradley Braves back in my day when Coach Mo was there, which they were really good, right? But the hockey crowd there was one to be around. Yeah, so there's a lot of great stories there.
I can recall being on the bench at a Bradley game and getting beat so bad that I wanted to turn around to the beer vendor and say, "What are those right now?" Because that's about it's going to make me feel better.
Yeah.
I will tell you, Coach Jones, thank you for joining Brian and I on Deep in the Valley. I will tell you, and we'll tell all Bradley fans willing to listen, we will cheer for Coach Jones and the Bradley Braves as long as they are not playing the Panthers. And so
I have to say the same thing. And here's the thing. I called my daughter, right? She's running track at Northern Iowa, and we're about to play the Panthers in the tournament. She couldn't come down. I'm like, all right. She texted me the day before against Valpo. Good luck, Dad. Hope you win the game. Nothing the next day. All right. So the loyalty of the father or the Panthers, I don't know. Well, we're going to have to figure that one. I'm going to probably have to sit her down and realize where what you can be a Panther fan on certain days, but when your dad's involved, we might not need to rethink that one.
Yeah.
But
all right.
Her loyalty to the purple and gold.
We can't falter for that. I guess we're going to take her side on that part of the argument. Everybody, fellas, thank you again. But that's another episode of Deep in the Valley. We appreciate you guys spending a part of your week and talking Missouri Valley Conference basketball with us. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, follow, and cover everything that's happening across the Valley all year long, from Cedar Falls to Des Moines, Nashville to Normal, and Carbondale to Chicago. This is that's rich in college basketball history, and we'll be here every week to tell those stories. For Brian Dutler, I'm Chris Bowser. We'll see you next time, Deep in the Valley.